Hello, we now begin the show with laughter. So welcome to the VHS Club. I am Katie. This is Natalie. And today we are talking all about Romeo and Juliet, a 1996 classic.
Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. If you're going to Google it, it's true. Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. Baz Luhrmann is the director.
Yes. And hilariously, I will say about this one, so unlike if you are just jumping in, we're on a Shakespeare adaptation kick. This wraps our Shakespeare adaptation because we could do this forever. We could have a whole Shakespeare adaptation show, but we're not going to do that.
The modernized Shakespeare adaptations. True. We're not doing like stage adaptations for film. We're not doing the straight out adaptations for film. Just the modern ones.
Yeah, it's true. But I will say that of the movies, like of searching the movies, O remains the most difficult one for us to look up. So that one you had to type like, Shakespeare movie 90s O in like quotations, movie
Othello in
brackets. Yeah, and still we were unable to find like any gifs.
Othello 2000 seems to work because it came out in the year 2000. Though it was filmed in the 90s.
It's not even the 90s. Yeah, so that's how quickly I forgot. But no, not a lot of fun facts on that one. Whereas for this one, you type in Romeo and Juliet movie, it immediately comes up as like one of the top options. You type in Romeo and Juliet, Leonardo DiCaprio, Leo, Claire, Baz, all of these keywords. And you're immediately able to find it. So it is searchable. And if you grew up in this era, as we did, it is like one of the most like swoon, iconic, romantic, so sad, tragic stories of all time. Which if you're sitting here being like, yeah, obviously it's Romeo and Juliet, I know, but still, yes.
This broke the mold even for Romeo and Juliet.
It did.
Though I have to say, Shakespeare is transcendent. When I was rewatching this and making notes, I'm like bawling my eyes out at the end of the movie, even though I've seen it maybe 100+ times.
Yeah.
Plus seeing the play, plus having memorized the play, plus having read the play, having written like final university term papers on it.
Yeah.
I still bawled my eyes out at the end, and I'm like, Shakespeare still pulls the heartstrings. Still dagger in the heart every time, Shakespeare.
I was trying to remember, and maybe you can tell me, or maybe our memories are just skewed from all of this anyway, but I was having this like moment where I'm like, okay, did this movie, which came out when I was 13 years old, I believe, did this movie make me obsessed with Shakespeare, or was I obsessed with this movie because I was obsessed with Shakespeare, or some weird combination of the two of them? Because I definitely have, and we talked about this when we talked about Hamlet, but I at one point, and I think now this one is a tipping point for me, I had both Hamlet and Romeo and Juliet memorized, maybe not completely, but pretty darn close. And
you had Romeo and Juliet completely memorized. I still remember.
I'm still pretty good at it. Yeah, I do.
A pocket-sized red leather-bound hardcover book with a red satin ribbon.
Yeah, my mom bought me that.
And we would walk around with it.
Yeah.
Everywhere. You had it memorized. I had it mostly memorized.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I remember sitting there like under trees and things and being like, some incredibly handsome Leonardo DiCaprio type is just going to walk by and be like, wow, that high schooler has a leather-bound copy of Romeo and Juliet. clearly memorized. So she would be quite the person to take out and hopefully not kill or be killed or murder or,
Yeah.
die
Yeah.
in some horrible way.
Katie
So
and I always thought that extremely handsome men would love smart women.
yeah, we were pretty convinced of that. It didn't really
Yeah.
work out, but but it
It worked out for one of us.
worked out. It worked out sort of. I don't know if my
Okay.
husband loves me for my ability to memorize Shakespeare plays, or
Oh no, he loves you for your intelligence.
for my
Yeah.
maybe or the fact that I cook sometimes, or other less attractive qualities.
Okay, I want to start this off with a fun fact.
Oh, you're gonna steal my fun facts. All right, bring them on.
Just one. Okay, probably a few. But,
Go for it. You
okay,
got the fun
so
facts today.
Romeo and Juliet in the Shakespeare world, so in academia, in
Oh, are we? It's
theater,
a fun fact about Shakespeare. All right,
about
let's do it.
Shakespeare. Yeah, not
Let's
the
do it.
movie. So this is considered a failed comedy. So
Yeah.
if you study Shakespeare, if you know Shakespeare, it has his very like formulaic setup for this is a comedy.
Yep.
But then it turns very savagely tragic.
Yeah. Do you think
More
the
so
people
than a
watching
lot of
it
his
were
other
like
tragedies.
thought that it would be a comedy and were like, "This is so fun! Oh my goodness!" Like,
Because the funny bits are really funny, and it's funnier than most of his comedies, and it's also more tragic than most of his tragedies. So rumor had it back in his day that he was writing a comedy, and the relationship that he was in with a mistress, because he was married with children, but he lived in Stratford, worked in London, that kind of, so he had, a lady friend
as you
in
do.
London, and apparently she broke his heart. So the play became a savage tragedy, which is also the inspiration for Shakespeare in Love, the movie that won him some Oscars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, fun fact, my husband still can't identify Gwyneth Paltrow in any movie that we
Ever.
watch. So that's
I'm like, she's
that
the one where
is
she
a
has
Gwyneth
no earlobe.
Paltrow movie. It's a
Her
Gwyneth
earlobes
Paltrow.
connect directly to her head. There's no lobe. And he still doesn't recognize her. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
really a thing you notice.
But we digress. So let us jump into a high level summary of this one, Nat, because really I feel like if you don't know the story of Romeo and Juliet, of which this is literally verbatim, you're in trouble, because it's a pretty famous one.
Another fun fact, there's there's like two deviations that the director writer Baz Luhrmann took with the film.
Mm-hmm.
One was that he apparently switched some of the characters, so some Capulets became Montagues and some Montagues became Capulets.
Mm-hmm.
There's such sub characters that I couldn't even look it up. I was like,
It was
I don't,
for the diehards.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second thing is he gave Lady Capulet and Lord Capulet first names, which is not in the play.
Yeah, and what were they? They were like Gloria and like,
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, one was Gloria, because I'm rewatching it this time around. It's so funny. This time I was like, all right, I'm not normally an observant person. I usually just get like swept up in the story and I just don't pay attention to any details. Yeah. It's ridiculous, really. But this one, I like, when the names came up, I was like,
oh, right.
Oh, Gloria?
Wait, so
I think it was Gloria. Now I need to look up the other one, because
it is. I'm pretty sure it is. So this film opens. Okay, summary of the play: two teens from warring families, like enemy families, fall in love, they elope, and then die because of a miscommunication.
Yeah, it's really,
and also the fact that their families have blood out for each other.
Yeah,
that's the whole play. So the way Baz Luhrmann interprets this, it takes place at Verona Beach in Miami, though it was filmed in Mexico City. So it's a little kind of confusing because the set looks like Verona Beach in Miami, but then...
Miami or California?
Yeah, Miami. Huh. When I looked it up, it said Miami. Yeah. I also thought Verona Beach was in California, because I'm like, isn't that where people surf? But when I read a recap, they said it's Verona Beach, Miami. So I'm assuming there's a Verona Beach, Miami. I've never been to Florida, so not a clue. It opens as, it's presented as like a newsreel where they're talking about the feud between the two sort of like gangs. It's essentially like two gangs that are represented, like two mob families.
Both alike in dignity in fair Verona, where we lay our scene.
And That's exactly how it opens. But it's presented as a news thing. It takes place in the 90s. You see the Montagues, which is Romeo's gang, and they're driving like down the highway. They're in these flash cars and these flash outfits, being total hooligan teenagers screaming to this loud music out of their, like, at the top of their lungs. They pull up to a gas station, and then you see the sort of slick Capulets come in, and stuff's gonna go down, and essentially a shootout ensues, and the gas station blows up, which was kind of amazing because it's
Yeah.
like really sets the scene.
Yeah.
Baz Luhrmann, what he did with this, besides placing it in the 90s and sticking strictly to the dialogue,
Yep.
is he used a lot of cinematic devices to interpret the dialogue
Mm-hmm.
so that the audience would really understand what's happening.
Yeah, it
So it's
felt
like he
very
would
relatable throughout the end. Like, okay,
very
relatable is not, I guess, the right word, but
well, yes, we're
you
not
didn't
from warring gangs, but
you didn't have any issue understanding
what's
any of the
happening? No.
dialogue because of everything that he did. So I do think he did an absolutely fantastic job on that front.
To like build up for scenes where there was a lot of tension, he would like film it almost on like really fast, like on a fast forward. He would do
Mhm.
low shots to see like people's feet walking as he's laying scenes. He would
Yeah.
do close-ups to people's faces. He would do slow-mos. He did all these sort of devices, cinematic devices, to relate the dialogue to the audience.
Yeah.
And then I find he also, the way he had the actors deliver the dialogue made it
Mm.
very understandable.
Yeah.
So I like immediately you're obsessed when you're watching it. You
Yeah.
understand.
And we so not to throw Hamlet under the bus, but we'll throw Hamlet a little bit under the bus.
Throwing
So
Hamlet 2000 under the bus. That's all this is about.
since we have been doing a modern Shakespeare adaptation run, a mini series within this show, I will say that, I mean, it should come as no surprise, hands down, this one is the best, at least in our opinion, of the modern Shakespeare adaptations. And I do think that while both this one and Hamlet, which 2000 version Hamlet,
Mhm.
they did are both a pretty effective job of including a ton of like Easter eggs and nuggets for people who are diehard Shakespeare fans throughout the movie. This one goes like above and beyond. So
Up
like
and down.
Hamlet got to maybe like 60% with that, and this one's like 112%. Like every, which is why I was trying so hard to pay attention this time around, because
Yeah.
every single like billboard, the license plates, the so we talked a little bit about this when we were talking about Hamlet, but so he
The
upped
names of the
the
guns.
names of the guns. So rather than having swords, obviously because it's modernized, these rival gangs have guns, but they not only does he do close-ups on the guns, which are called swords, like the brand
Mhm.
name is swords, but each one is a different one. So when he says like hand me my long sword, or like,
Yeah.
or I think one of them was called a rapier, like they are all
Yeah.
names of swords, but it's so fast moving that you really would miss a lot of that if you were, unless you rewound your movie, or you were paying really close attention. So I did try better this time around to pay really close attention, and there were just an insane amount of details going on
I
in
have
the
to say,
background, like just
in this
crazy.
movie, because I've read the play so much, this movie was the first time I realized the scene where, so Romeo was dating this girl Rosaline who basically dumped him out of nowhere, and he was all upset about it. So the guys are like, we're gonna sneak into the Capulet party
Yeah.
because they're having a big costume party,
Yep.
and we're gonna go find your girl Rosaline because she's like a cousin's cousin or something of the
Yeah.
family,
Yeah. She would be there.
and you can woo her.
Yep.
Of course, that doesn't happen because he sees Juliet and
He's
love at first
immediately
sight, yada
distracted. Yeah.
yada.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I do like that Shakespeare is like, okay, look, this kid seems really fickle, but he does explain it. He does kind of explain that fickleness away. Like
Yeah.
Romeo has this whole scene where he's describing to the friar that he's like, I didn't actually know what love was
Yeah.
until I met Juliet, until I saw Juliet, until I met her, until I kissed her, until I spoke to her. Like, it's like I didn't really understand until I knew her. So he seems fickle, like a 14-year-old would, but
Yeah.
But they do explain it. They're not portrayed as 13 and 14 in the movie. They are older teens. Because otherwise it's just a bit too much for like a 13-year-old to get married.
Although they do still have the obviously the line from the play, but they do still have, there is a conversation that happens between Paris, who is played by Paul Rudd, and again, I just like the fact this movie
is the same.
A, he looks the same. B, Leonardo DiCaprio plays this role so well that you prefer him to Paul Rudd, which is crazy to me. Like you're watching it and you're like,
but you don't hate Paul Rudd.
You don't hate Paul Rudd now.
Such a rube. Like he has no idea that all of this is going on around him. Like,
but
pity him.
There is this iconic scene in the movie where Paul Rudd's character Paris is the parent approved love match or romantic partner that they've approved for her, for Juliet to marry. So there is a conversation back and forth between Juliet's father, the leader of the Capulet family, with Paris's character, and he basically says that she's too young to get married. That like she's to, like there's
marry
time.
Her to you anyways.
I'll marry her to you anyways. But there is a line in it that does like remind everyone that she's young even at that time to get married. Like it's like, she's a little young. Like we don't really need to like race into this, but also sure, we'll marry her off to you.
Which is a commentary, because the play takes place in Italian Renaissance, which is before English Renaissance when the play was written. Yeah. So it's already historical at the time that it's written. Like it's a history play. Yeah. So to say that is too young to be married is a commentary even at the time. So
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so they go to this masquerade, which by the way, the scene in the movie is epic.
Yeah.
It has ruined every costume party for me forever since this movie has come out.
Yeah. I mean, really any kind of party. I feel like I watch movies like this, and this is probably like one of the like peak moments in any movie. But you're like, you watch these movies and you're like, I would like to be wealthy in a fake world in this movie. I don't want any of the other stuff to happen, but like I would have liked to just like I would like to attend more very expensive wealthy person parties. So if anyone out there is listening or watching, I'm in. I'll bring a costume. I'll go all out. But they look really fun. And again, like Baz, we've said throughout this episode that Baz Luhrmann's like attention to detail in all of this is crazy. Like
everybody's costume,
everyone's costume has a meaning to it.
Is a commentary on their personality, their character's personality.
Yep.
Like Juliet is an angel, she's virginal, she's innocent, she's earthreal. Romeo is the knight in shining armor. Tybalt is the devil. Mercutio is just insane and flamboyant and this amazing fluid gender bend, and he does that so well. What I was trying to say was they take ecstasy, or Molly, or whatever you want to call it. Like they take that before they get into the party, which explains a lot of the dialogue that I just didn't understand when I was younger. But then when I saw the movie, I'm like, oh, they're on drugs. Now I get all of it. It makes so much
when you're watching this as a 14-year-old, you're like, it's fun. Look how fun the party is. It's moving so fast. Look at it, so fun. I love the music. And as an adult, you're like, wow, are they okay? I'm concerned for them. I feel and also like, how are they awake at this time of night? I can't, it's very late. I don't understand.
It's really hot in there.
Looks very hot. They seem very tired. I don't like, throughout this entire movie. So I will say so I've rewatched it now twice last night and then about a month ago. So I've seen it probably hundreds of times, like Natalie said, but rewatching it as an adult, my thoughts throughout were like, Leonardo DiCaprio was 21 when he was in this movie. So part of me is like, is he too old for Claire Danes? So I was concerned about that rewatching it. And then I was like, 17? She was 17, even though they're perfect for each other in this movie. Like they do so good. The chemistry is ridiculous.
Insane.
That, and then I was like, he's wet throughout this entire, like, he's like constantly falling into water, or he's like in the rain. Like, I'm sure that as an actor he was probably just like, really though, like, do we really need to be like wet? I mean, she is also wet a lot, but there's a lot of, yeah, he is wet a lot throughout this entire movie. And then like, just so many feelings around the priest. Like, I was just like, I adore him, but then watching it again, so
What was his
so
name?
the
Pete
yeah,
Postlethwaite or something?
yeah, Postlethwaite.
God, he was such a brilliant
He was
actor.
such a great actor, and he plays the role so brilliantly. But he is this kind of like intermediary, I guess. Like, he's like approved by both families, right? So like the Capulets go and see him, he's their priest, and the Montagues go and see him as well. And so
Yeah.
he wants their Romeo and Juliet's relationship to be this, like, you know, peacemaking, yeah, like epic thing, right? So everything goes horribly wrong, and he helps Romeo get away, and he's like throughout this entire thing kind of this middle person. And as it gets closer to the end and things are falling apart, he gets to a point where, before everything goes horribly wrong, he sends a letter. He sends like a letter to Romeo, and the whole time I was just like, can't you just go though? Like, can't you just like get in your car and drive?
Savagely tragic.
I know it's savage,
because
but like the whole time you're like, can't you have told his friends? Like, you know, his friends are going to see him.
Do something yourself. That was the moment.
Yeah,
like, you don't trust the mailman. Like,
yeah. So the whole time, like, me as an adult, I was just like, you can't trust that delivery guy to get this incredibly urgent letter.
Didn't trust the delivery man. Okay,
and then
like
when he realizes that the letter may not have gotten to Romeo,
he's like, I should have done that myself. Maybe I'll do it now. Let me leave the not dead body of Juliet alone.
Not even, he goes to send another letter. Like, he goes to talk to them, and they're like, we don't know what happened, we couldn't deliver it. And he's like, I'm gonna write another letter. And I was like, Brace, you need to get in your car. Yeah,
stay with the body.
So my adult feelings were all of those. It was a lot of like, wow, Leonardo DiCaprio is still incredibly good looking back at this. He's wet a lot. Is he an appropriate age for Claire Danes? I'm concerned.
I didn't think that.
And then so many feelings about how much I both love the priest, and also I was just like, get in your car and drive over there.
In my notes while rewatching this, I actually wrote, I'm like, he has a master degree in like calming down spiraling out angsty teenagers.
I know, yeah, he was like fantastic.
2 or 3 times he calms Romeo down when he's like completely lost his shit. And then Juliet comes in saying like, my dad's making me marry somebody else like in 4 days. And she literally draws a gun on herself, threatens to kill herself, then threatens to kill him. She's like, I'm going to unalive all of us if you don't fix this. And he's like, no problem, I got it.
And he's just like, I have some poison. Hang on. Like, you're like, this is a priest, right? Like, right?
That was another thing in his opening scene where he's teaching a class, like an apocryphy class or like an alchemy class about plants to children and about the poison in plants. And it's like, this is kind of ironic considering it's like the Catholic Church and he's teaching alchemy. But
yeah, I know. I was like,
there's a lot of ironic moments in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't learn that in church.
Exactly. Well, Kimberly, who is watching in our live studio audience, so once again, this is our midpoint reminder that if you're not in the live studio audience, you're missing out. So join us every single Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, and you can be in the audience. Kimberly wants to know what costume both of us would wear if we got to go to a costume party. Natalie, what would your costume be?
You know, I think I think I've always wanted to do obviously the Juliet costume, and I've looked for that shape wings that she has in the movie, could never find them.
Yeah, I know.
But now rewatching the movie, I'm like, I want to go as Mercutio at the costume party. Like, I want to go as a drag queen.
I was like, is it inappropriate that I just want to be like, I would like to dress up in costume as the actor playing Mercutio from this movie, because he is just brilliant. Like, his energy and his like how he was my favorite character when I first saw it. He's my favorite character watching it again.
He was my favorite reading it. My favorite when I first watched this movie was Tybalt.
Yeah.
Because John Leguizamo, which was a shock.
Saying that name.
Shocker. Like, I remember watching this being like, none of these actors can do Shakespeare. I'm like, maybe Claire Danes. I know she's a good actor. Like, but in my teenage head of like, these are not Shakespeare actors. How is this gonna work? Tybalt, John Leguizamo pulls us out of the bag. He was the coolest, the creepiest, the most sociopathic, but you love him character.
Yeah.
Oh my god, he was so good from his opening scene, the way he drawled and drew out his words.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Crushed his little cigarellos under his like like silver heels.
His
Like,
badass
God, it
boots.
was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Badass boots.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another fun fact Katie told me when they're filming, so there's this pinnacle scene where everything, Romeo and Juliet, they, with the help of the friar, they end up getting married, and they all think, okay, this is going to be the end of the feud between our families, and tonight I'm going to go to Juliet and we'll be together. And he's like so excited, he wants to tell his best friend and his cousins, and they're at Verona Beach, and he drives up and he's screaming, Mercutio, Mercutio, basically like, guess what? And everything goes to pot because Mercutio, who is extremely emotional and has a very short fuse, Tybalt, who is a sociopath and has a very short fuse, are basically drawing guns on each other on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And Romeo goes and he tries to break it up, and he's trying to tell Tybalt, like, no, there's no more feud. I love you. And he wants to say because we're family, but can't because he's still trying to protect Juliet in case everything goes sideways. And they get in a fight. Tybalt beats the crap out of him, and he's like, I'm still okay with it. I'm not going to fight with you.
Yeah, I'm not putting my gun on you.
And
sword, as
Tybalt
the case
ends
might
up
be.
going to shoot him, but shoots Mercutio, who saves Romeo, and then Romeo goes on a vengeance, whatever, bend. But when they're filming this scene, there's this like really atmospheric storm in the background, and it's so dramatic that I was like, it almost looks like super fake. Apparently it was a real actual hurricane. They filmed for as long as they could, and then the hurricane rips through and destroys the whole set.
Yeah, there's like this fantastic moment because they filmed this movie in Mexico, so there's a lot of scenes that are kind of like out in like a desert, basically. And so they're fighting, and Mercutio is killed, and he's laying like in the sand, and the like intensity of the storm is like whipping the sand up around like his body, like, so it gives this like really like creepy effect where like
And the
everyone
lightning
is
cracks.
the
right
lightning is cracking, everyone is like rushing
dialogue,
away because they're taking off, and there's like a a car chase,
they
and
were
emotions
legit running.
but yeah, the sand just
Hollywood.
whipping around that I'm sure he was like laying there being like, guys, like, can I get up?
What are we calling cut?
Yeah, are we gonna call this because it's something horrible is happening here. Yeah,
And the
it
scene
was
when they're
crazy.
all running, I'm like, it's like a panned back scene, and it's panning back, and they're all running towards camera, and like they're running really hard on sand, and I'm like, it's so dramatic. And then I'm like, oh no, it's because they're actually running from a hurricane.
Yeah, I really wish so.
That's crazy.
Another fun fact, and we put this in the countdown timer for anyone who was joining us live and was checking out our Did You Know fun fact, but one of the hairdressers, and I actually don't know how many hairdressers were involved in this movie.
He was
so
the head hairdresser.
the head hairdresser, but he was kidnapped by a gang of banditos. That's
in Mexico City.
In Mexico City. And given back to them when they paid off a ransom of $300. That's it. $300. And supposedly, and we desperately wish there was more information. It almost feels
There isn't.
like maybe it's not true because of the lack of information, because it seems I want the backstory. But apparently they were like, oh, yeah, we will pay the $300. Like, that's nothing for a human life.
And, like, the only thing I could find on that was, like, a quote from Baz Luhrmann saying, like, I felt that was really cheap and was super happy to pay it.
Obviously, we're going to pay this. So they paid the $300. And I guess in the exchange, they, gave the $300 over, and they the banditos threw the hairdresser out of a car, and it broke his leg on the way out. And I was like, I have so many questions about this fun fact. I really would like to know all of the backstory and the details here. Like, what, was this in the middle of filming? How did the hairdresser get kidnapped? Did someone?
Why? Why though?
Why
did he get kidnapped?
He get kidnapped? So
Okay,
I feel like the energy behind of a movie that was about gangs and warring rivals was like somehow
Yeah.
swept up with like real life gangs and intensity in the background. So yeah, between a storm and banditos, it was a crazy time on the set
Pretty
of this movie.
spectacular. Yeah. So unlike in Hamlet, to throw it under the bus yet again, where some of the actors seemed in Hamlet to not understand the dialogue, like of the play whatsoever. Like they just
Mhm.
didn't get Shakespearean English, which is pretty much the basis of all of the English we speak now.
But sure, yeah.
Besides that, in Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, everybody understood the assignment.
Yeah,
They
every
all
single
got
actor
it.
was fantastic.
Every single actor knew exactly what they were saying, exactly why they were saying it. And
Yeah.
they said it in such a way that it was so, like, they normalized these characters for us and made them so understandable and realistic. And one of my favorites is Miriam Margolyes. She's Australian British actress. If you've never seen an interview with her, I highly suggest watching. You will go down a rabbit hole on YouTube watching interviews
Yeah.
of her, especially her on the Graham Norton show.
Mhm.
Oh my god, she is the funny, crassest woman in the world.
She's
Funniest.
fantastic. Yeah.
I love her. But her playing Romeo, Juliet's nurse
Mhm.
is so hilarious. And there's a scene earlier in the movie where Lady Capulet is screaming, Juliet! And that sticks in my mind. And then it's mirrored again later by the nurse. And there's a scene of her shadow in the window just shaking back and forth, screaming Juliet. And that lives rent free in my brain
Yeah.
pretty much all the time.
Yeah. My other favorite moment of her in this movie is where so Romeo and Juliet have met and they've agreed to, to meet again, and they're swept up in this romance, but they're not yet married. And so the nurse goes to speak to Romeo to convey, Juliet's message of where they can meet next and to kind of feel him out, get his like feelings on what's going to happen. And so the nurse comes back. She like comes into the Capulet house and she's like gets herself a sandwich, is like sprawled out on the chair. And
Makes
Juliet's like,
tea,
please tell me what happened. And she's just like,
asks for a
hold
back
on. Yeah,
massage.
she asks for a back massage. She like will not tell her. And it's so relatable. You're
She's
just
like,
like,
I'm so old and weary. Like,
yeah,
how could I possibly remember what he said? And by the way, he's super hot. That
yeah,
beautiful face, that gorgeous body. And
yeah,
she's like, oh my God, I already know this.
yeah. Please just tell me. Like it's so
Such a
beautifully
good
done
exchange.
because it is the actual dialogue from the play, but it is
Yeah.
so brilliantly acted by both of them that you feel like you are watching a like 90s or even a today movie exchange between a teen and a mother, or a teen and a
Yeah.
like close adult friend, where you're just kind of like, just tell her what he said. Yeah, it's
I
really
also
well
love,
done.
so Nurse goes to Verona Beach to see the Montague boys, to see Romeo, to talk to him.
Yeah.
And as soon as Romeo sees her, he's like running off to go and talk to her because he knows how important this is.
Yeah.
But the guys are kind of hassling him and like, where are you going? What are you doing? And Mercutio, being the melodramatic
Yeah.
like diva that he is, shoots his gun off in the air to be like,
To get
where
attention,
are
yeah.
you going? Like, who cares about the old lady? And he's like, really? Like, really? You're unhinged. Like, you shoot a gun to get my attention?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no,
Okay, so
it's
iconic
amazing.
moments.
Yeah. Fish
Romeo
tank.
and Juliet first fish tank. Yeah,
Fish
they
tank, yeah.
first see each other in the fish tank. And just that whole in this whole scene, the fish, the way they lock eyes, and it's slightly distorted, and it's almost like a fever dream because, well, Romeo's also on, ecstasy, and um, the elevator scene
The
and
elevator
how that
scene.
frames their kiss.
Which, fun fact, they had to actually build like a fake elevator because there was no way that they could capture the scene that they wanted, which had this like kind of surround circular motion with the
Yep.
camera in a tight elevator. So they had to build a fake
Or
elevator to be
slow
able to
down the doors enough, I would
to,
imagine, to capture the kissing and
to do that. Yeah. So yeah, the
yeah.
elevator was fantastic. The balcony scene is fantastic between
Okay,
them.
what I loved about the balcony scene is the way that it's set in the movie is Romeo, like, he gets to the balcony, he jumps over the wall, he ditches his friends, he's like, I gotta see her one more time. and it's in the back sort of courtyard, but there's a pool, and he's tripping over everything.
Yeah, he's
He's being
making like
such
a
an
ton of
awkward,
sound. Yeah.
but he's also just being an awkward teenager, and he's like so nervous
Yeah.
to see her, and he's like excited and anxious, and he's like stumbling over everything, like figuratively and literally, like his words are kind of mumbled, and I love that. I love how they did that. And also, like, as we know from She's All That, like a pool scene with the fairy lights, so
Yeah.
romantic.
Yeah.
And then
Very
they're all
romantic.
wet 'cause they fall in the pool.
Yeah. He falls in the pool like
Kissing
multiple
underwater
times. Yeah.
looks great in movies.
Yeah. Reality, maybe not so much, but yeah, in the movies it looks fantastic. Yeah, that scene is epic. I mean, like Mercutio at the costume party, it was
Oh,
fantastic.
nobody makes an entrance like Mercutio.
Yes.
Literally in his like drag outfit.
Yeah.
He's dressed up as a drag queen. I think for no other reason than he just likes to have fun
Yeah.
and be dramatic.
Yeah.
He has this sort of capelet on and he flings it up. Oh my God.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
staircase. So it's like this spiraling staircase and it's meeting at the middle to go into the ballroom. And it's a whole like dance sequence. He like walks down in like a flash mob, basically.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
I
The
love also Paris, which is Paul Rudd's character,
mhm.
and Julia dancing.
Yeah.
Not because it's an iconic scene, but just that I'm like, she must have had, because so they're dancing and he's just acting, like Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
He's being adorable and goofy and funny, and she's cracking up. I'm like, I bet that was real life and they just kept it in. Because I'm
Yeah,
like,
there's
her
a
with
moment
face.
there's a moment like right after that. Paul Rudd is dressed for the costume party in an astronaut outfit. And
Is out of space with how he knows what's going on.
yeah, and so there's a scene in it where there's like, a crowd standing around, there are fireworks going off. Romeo and Juliet are completely looking at each other, and but Paris thinks that like she's still kind of right next to him, and he looks back like with this like childish like excitement for the fireworks. He's like,
Grin.
look at the fireworks. He's like so excited, and his face in that, it's just like he's so likable just in that moment that like for a second you're just like, oh, but he's a nice guy. You should just
You
marry
hate
him.
Paris
Yeah.
in the play, but when Paul Rudd plays him, you're like, I feel
Yeah.
so bad. He just doesn't get it.
Yeah, he's
You
like,
just want to give him a hug and be like, it's okay. You'll find someone else.
that moment is
Maybe
definitely my
Rosalind.
favorite. That moment's definitely my favorite. And then I mean, I guess if we're talking iconic moments, and we should talk about this because so the obviously the final scenes where they both actually die is brutal. It is iconic, but it is brutal. I will say, and Nat knows this well, that in the probably like 31st times that I watched this movie, I like could not handle Claire Danes as an actress because I thought she was the ugliest crier of all time. Like the way she
And
cries,
I argued.
it was distracting to me. But I will say that rewatching it the last 2 times, not even
Right.
just this time, but the time before,
Right.
it wasn't nearly as bad as it was in my
It's
mind.
so realistic. That sob. She does like
Yeah.
a full-bodied racking sob.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and Katie and I have had this like disagreement our whole lives since this movie
Yeah.
came out, where
20
she's
plus
like,
years.
it's so ridiculous. And I'm like, it's so realistic. And we've actually measured like, okay, how bad is the situation on a scale of 1 to Claire Danes crying?
Yeah, 1 to Claire Danes crying. And even now, like I have been judgier than I should be of Claire. I'm like, do I really want to watch Homeland because
also
Claire
does
Danes
that
is in it? She's an ugly crier. I don't know if I can. Is there crying in this? Yeah, I've been really
But
judgy
it's
about
so
it. I'm sorry, Claire
realistic.
Danes.
I find she's the way, and like well, I was like in love with her before this because she was in a TV show called it's My So-Called
My
Life.
So-Called Life, which was
Didn't even run a full season.
It wrapped right before this movie aired, like
I
a
still
year or so
can't believe
before
it
this
wrapped.
movie, not aired, that's the wrong word, released. And hilariously, and here's another fun fact for everyone if you're keeping track, Natalie Portman was the original actress that was cast for Juliet's role, and I guess she was also, I think she was also 16 or 17 in real life, but I guess she looked, and probably this is just because of her career as well, because she
And also her
had,
stature. She's very
and her stature,
petite.
she looked so much younger than Leonardo
Yeah.
DiCaprio and like they were doing this movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. They were not changing him at all. So
No,
they
I think there was no casting for
there
Romeo. It
was
was
there
like
was no
always going to be
casting.
him.
So
Yeah.
here, back to back fun facts. I'll finish this one and then I'll give the one about Leonardo DiCaprio. But so yeah, they thought that it was just too big. It looked creepy. Like it basically looked like too big of an age gap. Like it
Yeah.
just looked inappropriate. So they ended up finding Claire Danes, who they knew from My So-Called Life, and thought that like she would be a good fit, and she absolutely was. Leonardo DiCaprio said that she was the only person in the all of the women that auditioned for this film that made direct eye contact with him from the get-go and like throughout the
Yeah,
entire
he was already famous at this time for several things.
he
And
was, but it's funny because all of the interviews with Baz Luhrmann say that Baz Luhrmann, and this is what I don't totally understand, but maybe it's because Baz Luhrmann was an up and coming filmmaker at this time himself, so maybe he just didn't have as much of a context, and is Australian,
also
so
from a different continent.
exactly. But he said that he wanted the quote that kept coming up over and over again in like researching this movie is that he basically wanted to do this movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. So he had Leonardo DiCaprio in his mind, and he was like, if only he was an actor, like if only he was able to act. And everyone was like, Leonardo DiCaprio can act. Like it was a weird like statement. It was just like, I like the look of this guy, so like I want, this is the guy that I want to work with, but like I hope he acts. Like I hope he can act.
I think it's because he was more of a TV actor than like this really solidified his big movie.
Well, he did Gilbert Grape before this, though. He did What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
And Basketball Diaries, but still he was still young, and he was coming off of his like child TV star. You know, like this is what solidified him.
He was coming off of that. He actually also, I don't know if he does now, but didn't at all like Shakespeare. So like he was definitely not a Shakespearean actor. He didn't have like a passion for Shakespeare. It wasn't, yet he still helped to fund this movie. So like not only was he like the key actor that Baz Luhrmann like needed to have to make this movie work, but he also like somehow convinced Leonardo DiCaprio to be like, here's my money, even though I'm like an incredibly young and up and coming actor with like this could be like my make or break movie. He believed enough in the movie to front his own money for it, which is kind of unheard of, really.
Too. Yeah.
Like just
for a 21-year-old, like
for a 21-year-old,
he had a good team.
Yeah.
From what we could tell from this particular moment in his career, but you know who I noticed in this that I completely forgot was in it? Balthazar was played by like a very young Jesse Bradford.
Yeah, he's probably the weakest actor in this, although I do love him. The like hearing he only has I think like 2 or 3 lines in it, and he's in that moment, so he's the one that like goes out to tell Romeo.
He's the one who fucks everything up.
Yeah. So Romeo has been banished because he kills Tybalt. I don't think we finished the storyline, but you should know it because it's Shakespeare. So he goes out, and Romeo kills Tybalt, and then he's banished, right? So it's this like epic scene, and the priest says, "Don't even worry about it. It's not that big of a deal to be banished. At least you're not killed." And Romeo's like, "I'd rather be dead." And he's like, "No, it's gonna be fine.
Like, no, we'll sneak her out. Like, we'll fix it. You know,
I'm very good at poisons and drugs, so I will make her seem as though she's dead." He doesn't say this to Romeo, but that's what he should have said to Romeo. But he
sent Romeo a letter, and
he sends Romeo away.
Like.
And it goes to hell.
They missed each other. Like he missed the post twice.
But he could have told Jesse, but he didn't.
No, but he didn't. So the thing is, Friar didn't see Jesse. He heard something behind him. He was facing the altar, and he heard something in the doorway of the church, and it's like this huge cathedral. He turns around and he's like, "Oh, there's nobody there."
That whole moment, like the last probably 35 minutes of this movie, at least
everything
for me rewatching it, I was just like, why? Like,
what
why?
kills me is Baz Luhrmann. So Juliet takes a poison to make her seem dead. So she has like low heart rate, like so low that you can't feel pulse. She's cold. She's dead.
She looks dead. Yes.
And Romeo comes in, he sees her because his friend Balthazar said, "Hey, she's dead." And he comes back into town, so like
solely to
cool in the
kill
movie.
himself, like solely to be with her in death.
to
Yeah.
verify she is dead and then kill himself
Yeah.
because she's dead.
Yeah.
And he's being chased by like, it's like this whole like police like SWAT like
Yeah.
chasing him through the city. He's running up the church steps. He takes a hostage. He takes refuge in the church. And anyways, he goes up to her and he's like, has this whole monologue where he's like, oh, I can't go on without her, and how could this happen, and I screwed everything up. And but Juliet's like, you see, she like kind of moans, she sort of shakes her head, her fingers are twitching, she's waking up.
Yeah.
And then he takes the poison as they lock eyes. She is now sitting up as he's swallowing the poison. And it's a fast-acting poison, and there's no help for it. He took enough poison to kill 20 people.
Mm-hmm.
And she's fully awake, and they both know that they're alive once he's swallowed it. That was mean.
It was really brutal.
It was mean.
Romeo was like talking to her and holding her, looking in her eyes, and her fingers are
sobbing.
Moving. And you're like, her fingers are moving. It's like, yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal to rewatch. It really is brutal. It's brutal to watch. It's brutal to rewatch. It's brutal, like, even if you're like looking through your
I would have ugly cried if I saw
it's true.
Romeo DiCaprio die in front of me. You think I would pretty cry? No. Doesn't matter what Hollywood paid you. You would ugly cry at this.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. But you know what? I will say, amidst all of it, this is probably, it's definitely in my top 5 favorite movies, if not top 3.
Yeah.
Other than Empire Records, which was the first one that we dived into in this show. I think this is the only other one that I have almost entirely fully memorized. I just like, even though it's painful to watch, it's also just so beautifully done, like from start to finish. It's just
there's like this over the top, like this very like this sort of religious symbolism.
Yeah.
And
a lot of icons in it. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of icons and all the neon, like the neon crosses and the neon, like
it's very gaudy.
Religious icons.
It's like
very over the top
and sensationalized. And we should talk a little bit, because we're going to move from this wraps our Shakespeare adaptation, modern Shakespeare adaptation miniseries, which is not a snappy title, and moves it into, we're going to do now probably not all 6 of Baz Luhrmann's movies, but certainly the 3.
The Red Curtain Trilogy, which is the second of his Red Curtain Trilogy.
So for those of you who don't know Baz Luhrmann well, and we just looked up this information ourselves because we were a little surprised actually by this, but
more movies.
So Baz Luhrmann has done 6 movies in total. So let me see if I can remember them off the top of my head. So there is Strictly Ballroom, which is fantastic, and I'm so excited we're gonna watch that one again. One of my favorite like childhood movies
in the Red Curtain Trilogy.
Yeah, so that one is a very like Australian movie. So that one, if you're not good with accents, you're gonna want to have those closed captions on. But Strictly Ballroom, Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, Australia, Great Gatsby, and then the new Elvis, which we have not seen, but coming soon too. So yeah, I mean, and I will say, and it's funny, people have different rankings of them. If you're watching or listening, we'd love to know if you've seen all of them, and if so, which are, what are your top 3, or how would you rank them all the way through? I still don't know if I have a solid answer. I feel like
this one's my favorite.
I feel it's funny. I would say that, but I have this like very deep childhood nostalgia for Strictly Ballroom, which I saw like as a kid. I watched with my parents endless times. I watched with my godparents a ton of times. Like Paul is saying this.
I love it.
Paul, you and I are on the same page. Strictly Ballroom.
I still do the Strictly Ballroom, which will explain there's a heartbeat moment in it, and we'll explain it when we watch it. But I still love that.
So I feel like it's that one. If we're talking just Baz Luhrmann movies, that one and Romeo and Juliet are probably like at a tie in my mind for first place for very different reasons, like, and very different nostalgic reasons. But those two. Moulin Rouge would be my next one after that, and then Gatsby, and then Australia, which I did not love. And I don't know whether or not I really want to see Elvis. We were talking. Let us know whether or not you want to see Elvis. It's outside of the date range for this show, but It's getting a lot of critical acclaim, but Nat's not into the idea
Okay,
of
so
watching
my
it.
little backstory, my aunt was obsessed with Elvis,
Mhm.
and growing up I ended up learning everything good, bad, and ugly about Elvis. This movie, I did only see an extended trailer. I'm like, well, if you're not going to be honest, I'm not going to watch it. So
Nat does not
like
believe in the validity of this movie, Baz Luhrmann. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, if you're doing a bioepic nowadays, make the person, like, be honest about the person, because we're in a society, if you lie about them, we're gonna like them less. Like,
Yeah. We don't want to glamorize it. Yeah.
I do have to say, to go back to our iconic scenes in
Oh
this
yeah.
movie,
We missing one?
there was one
Sure, we probably are.
in the church when Romeo and Juliet are getting married,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's this young boy in the choir,
Oh, you're gonna make me
beautiful
cry.
young boy singing this song. What was it called? Everybody Love? Brothers and sister.
I think
Da, da,
so.
da.
Shoot, Nat, you're
Anyway,
pulling on a fun fact I don't have.
I'm sorry. Well, it's not, this is not a fun fact. So this
It's a sad
beautiful,
fact.
beautiful young singer, his name was, I don't want to mess it up. Where is it? Quentin Dan Tarver. He passed away 2 years ago,
I
tragically in
know.
a car accident, just
And he
as
was
he
on
was
Idol too for a
starting a
bit.
musical career. Like, he
Yeah.
was just dropping a new album. He was like, really, he's like, okay, this is it now. And he has the most beautiful voice, like
Yeah,
literally angelic.
his singing in a couple of the scenes, so it's all around the same
Yes.
time period in this movie, but they is just phenomenal. I mean, as a kid, and I'm sure certainly as an
That
adult.
movie,
So
that song, I think it's called Love or Everybody Love, something along those lines. He also does Prince's When Doves Cry,
which is in my head rent free
which I'm
forever.
like, nobody can cover that. Like, nobody can cover that
This kid
song.
could. This guy could.
Yeah, and he was a kid.
I know. He was so talented. It's so sad.
Yeah. For me, when I watch this, and I know DiCaprio is super young in it, but I get this like overwhelming sense of my childhood crush on him.
Oh yeah, same.
It's like I get this like sort of knee jerk. It's like, oh, how you always remember to ride a bike. It's like you always remember how to have a crush on young DiCaprio.
Hmm.
Like, the scene when he is comes up to like the Tybalt Mercutio and everything's gonna go bad moment, and
Hmm.
there's this one little strand of blonde hair that like gets in his face. I'm like, this is my favorite movie.
You know what I should
It's
do?
not my favorite movie ever, but it's my favorite Baz Luhrmann movie because of that
When I'm
one
in that
rogue
moment,
strand of
this is
hair.
my favorite movie. Yeah, I should totally go up. So embarrassing fun fact about Katie. I up in my attic, and I'm sure I still have this. So of teen crushes, right? So for me, it was Leonardo DiCaprio and Macaulay Culkin. I still love both Leonardo DiCaprio and Macaulay Culkin. They're like, I will ride or die with them. But I have like, it was probably Scholastic. I'm trying to think like what the publisher was. I have these like fangirl like books that were like about their lives, which I'm sure are probably not even kind of accurate. I have one on Leonardo DiCaprio and I have one on Macaulay Culkin that are like the same publisher. They were like, the like
It was
square
Scholastic because I
picture
have one
books.
about, you
Yeah.
got me one about the Canadian boy band from the 90s called the
Oh
Moffats.
yeah, I have a few
And
of
it's
those ones as
Scholastic. I
well.
busted that out a few days ago.
Yeah, so I will find those and snap a photo for our Instagram account so you can all laugh at
Yeah.
me / with me. But yeah, the I will say I'm gonna go on record. I know that Leonardo DiCaprio as a person, like there are people who love him and hate him, but
He's a brilliant actor.
but
It
he
seems that
is
he's a man
nailed.
child and hasn't grown out of he hasn't grown out of the age when he filmed this movie. It seems like he's stuck there
Yeah. But he
in real
has
life. That's what we see
I
as
have
the
yet
public.
to watch a movie or anything that he has done that I have not been impressed with him in. Like
Oh my God.
he is a
He's good
phenomenal
in
actor.
everything. Yeah.
I thought like so if you have not yet, and we should add this one to our list, but if you have not yet seen What's Eating Gilbert Grape, he was in that before this movie, and he plays a kid with disabilities. I forget exactly what his character is supposed to have, but both my father and I were 100% convinced, like we had never seen him before. We're like, wow, that
Same.
kid
My
did an
dad too.
amazing job, right? And then they were up for an Oscar in it, and he was like clearly did not have disabilities, and we were watching it, we're like, whoa, that guy is not disabled, because this entire movie we're like, good job. Like, yeah. It's
Random
just like,
fact, similar. My dad, there was this movie with Josh Hartnett, who we recently discussed in a previous episode,
yeah.
where he's British. The movie takes place in England, and my dad
was
would
convinced.
literally not believe me. And it wasn't like days of the internet where you could just Google like an interview with him. He's like, no, that kid is British. There's no way he's faking that accent. He's not American. Like, there's no way.
But he is. And your dad's like,
I'm like, no, he's really American. It's like, oh, let me go rent a VHS tape of him in something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And my dad thought his American accent sounded fake compared to his British accent. So good job, Josh.
Some actors are just phenomenal. So I'm loving, once again, final plug of the evening for hanging out in the live chat. We have Paul and Kimberly here, who are usually here with us because we love them. Thanks so much for hanging with us. Paul is saying that, so his rating system is, he's with me. He loves Strictly Ballroom. He would pick Moulin Rouge as number 2. Australia once was too many. I'm with you on that. I love all the actors.
It was a good ad for Australia.
It was a good
but it could have been an ad for Australia.
It was like a 3-something hour long movie too, like 3 hour plus.
Yeah.
And he was like, now we know why Gatsby is on the list. Yeah. I thought that Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby was fantastic as well. But again, I just said that I don't think
beautifully shot, opulent.
Yeah. And Kimberly also loves Strictly Ballroom. Look at this. I totally assumed that most people hadn't seen Strictly Ballroom, so I'm kind of impressed.
I know, me too. I felt like it's so niche that we know Strictly Ballroom. It's not.
It just means that people who are hanging out with us have the best possible taste in movies. Yeah.
Another fun fact, and I might be totally, because I'm remembering this fact, so anybody can correct me. I will be wrong on this.
It could be like fun, but potentially not correct fact. Go.
Completely incorrect, possibly because I'm remembering this from the 90s. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that, so there are different ethnicities of actors in this movie, but there are 3 Black actors in this movie.
There's Mercutio, there's the Prince.
And the narrator.
Nice.
And the reason that Baz Luhrmann specifically only had those 3 Black actors in the movie is because they're all relatives in the play.
Oh, interesting.
He was like the nephew of the Prince / narrator. So that's why that happened, is that there's these 3 actors because they're relatives, and it was just his like clever little way of showing, hey, these 3 people are related.
I do remember that, and while I was rewatching it, so we're either both wrong or neither wrong, but I do remember, and watching it again, I was like, oh wow, I forgot like how good the Prince is in this as well. So he's like the equivalent of the police chief, captain, some sort of police officer, but yeah, he's fantastic.
He's called Captain Prince in the movie.
Yeah. All right, so
he's I think Paris, which is Paul Rudd's character again, is called Count Paris in the movie.
And Gloria Capulet, and I didn't have time to look up, but we'll put the father. I want to say it was like Ted or Rob. It was something where you were like, really? But also you kind of like it as a detail.
Enough. Lord Capulet and Nurse, who neither
look it up before we go.
Neither of them are Italian, have Italian accents in the movie. I mean, they might be of Italian descent, but
Baz Luhrmann, Romeo, and
but they had very distinct, very, very well executed accents in the movie.
Capulet, dad, first name.
If you look at the casting, it should be listed under his cast name. Yes, we're saying Kimberly and Paul are like, yes, like Strictly Ballroom is a favorite older movie. I'm like, same. It's one of those, I have this small cottage academy.
Oh, I was totally wrong, you guys. You want to guess what it is? It was not even close. I'm like, Ted or Rob. His name was Fulgencio Capulet.
Yeah, I told you he had an Italian accent.
But I'm pretty sure the mom was Gloria, so now I gotta find the cast. Hang on, wait. Now I might be totally making things up now.
Oh, and the mom is who I kept calling, the actress's name is Diane Venora. And I kept wanting to call her Diane Verona.
Oh, I'm right. It is Gloria Capulet. It's Gloria Capulet. Dane is on saying that I'm live fact checking you. No, I'm actually live fact checking myself because I totally thought that. I totally thought that that the Capulet father was Ted Capulet, which we should just rename. It's a great name, Ted Capulet.
Ted.
It's much better than Fulgencio. Fulgencio. Oh, and Brian Dennehy was in this. There are so many actors who are
So
in it.
many.
Paul Sorvino was the one who played Ted Capulet. You were
Fulgencio.
right. Hey, look at you now. You got this one right. Paul Rudd, Count Paris. Now I'm live fact checking you.
For our
Let's see
listeners,
here.
I just stuck my tongue out at Katie when she's like, "Oh, hey, you're right."
Did you bite your thumb at me?
I did several times. So
I
when
did
we
bite
were
my thumb.
kids, for whatever reason, the "Do you bite your thumb at me" scene at the beginning of the movie was Katie and I our favorite. Like we would run to the park down the street and like scream at each other off the jungle gym. Like,
Do you bite your thumb at me? I do bite my thumb, but I do not bite my thumb at you.
But
Do
I
you
thumb
bite
at
your
you.
thumb at me? Yeah.
I do not bite my thumb. I do bite my thumb, sir, but not at you, sir. But I do. Great scene. We love it.
Truth. Well, we have
Well,
rolled to the end of the show, and Nat told me that I need to remember to do the wrap-up scene. So
yes, because
I'm
we've missed
gonna
the
do
last 2 episodes.
and
And I'm always like, when we log off, where's that thingy at the end?
it's not
Just
as
like,
important as the rating system. So live studio audience who show up at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, for anyone that is feeling the FOMO, how many potatoes do you think we're going to give this one? As we remember, we're at a potato scale of 1 to 5, or that's what we've told you. But, you know, you never know. You never know. All right. A couple seconds here, Nat. How many potatoes you were thinking?
Oh, I'm thinking because this is Shakespeare and this is Shakespeare being transcendent. You go from the 1600s to the 1990s. You get all the potatoes.
All the potatoes. Correct. I don't even know
Yeah.
how many. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 potatoes. As Nat said during Hamlet, if this had gone to Shakespeare, it would have been just bags full of potatoes. Well, we're going to give it to Baz Luhrmann and Shakespeare, all the potatoes, or 16 potatoes. Paul says all the potatoes, all the potatoes from Dane, all the potatoes are here. We did it. You did it. You wasted another perfectly good hour of your life listening to Nat and I talk about movies. This wraps up our modern Shakespeare adaptation series, and we will be moving into a couple of Baz Luhrmann's movies. So what do you think, Nat? Moulin Rouge or Strictly Ballroom next week?
Well, Strictly, clearly, because
okay, I'm in.
That's
Hey, Paul.
And plus, Paul and Kimberly said they love Strictly, and we love Strictly.
It's a spud of a movie. So Paul and Kimberly, if you would like and you are around, you are welcome to join us and discuss Strictly Ballroom next week. We will send you the guest link and you can come on and share your feelings, but only if you watch the movie sometime before Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So let us know whether or not you want to. You can get in touch. You know where to find me, so you can always track me down. But yeah, we want to do more guests, so we'll have to have more guests. So we'll do Strictly Ballroom, and the following week we'll do Moulin Rouge. And then we'll go back to our regular list because we've been ignoring all of your recommendations, everyone listening.
We're going to change that.
But yeah, we're changing it up.
I think it'll be a dramatic change after Baz.
We need maybe after Baz, we need like one we haven't seen or haven't seen in a really long time, because I feel like we're only doing movies we like. So, we should take a fan favorite.
I have an idea, but it'll be a surprise.
Okay.
We'll get there.
I love a surprise idea. All right, I'm going into the wrap, everyone. But before I fully wrap, here is all the information you need to know. We record live every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. You can find the replay videos of these at any point on YouTube. We are youtube.com/@the VHS Club. You can email us at the VHS Club pod@gmail.com. You can listen wherever you like to get podcasts, which now includes YouTube Music app. Woo! So you can find us wherever you like podcasts. The new episodes drop on Friday mornings, sometimes Thursday nights. Please, please, please share with your friends, love, review, send in your movie recommendations, and join us in the live chat because it's always more fun with friends. That's it. We're moving into the wrap. Anything else, Nat?
That's it. See you guys next week.
We'll see you next week.